As the son of Guinean immigrants who was born in Saudi Arabia, raised in New York, and has traveled all around the world, I've always been fascinated with the concept of home. They say home is where the heart is, but what about where it used to be, where it wants to be? This led me on a journey to explore the goals, struggles, and accomplishments of African immigrants who have returned home. This season takes place in one of my countries of origin, Dakar, Senegal, the former capital of French West Africa. In 1960, Senegal gained independence from France. The peaceful transition of power from French colonial rule to self-governance was a momentous occasion. Senegal's economy is driven by construction, tourism, fishing, agriculture, and mining. It is one of the world's leading producers of phosphate and has a rich subsoil with various mineral resources including gold, platinum, iron ore, and copper. The opportunities are endless. Are you brave enough to come home? This episode of Momo Dione Going Home, Dakar, Senegal, I linked up with my good friend Djibril Drame, an amazing visual artist and art curator who recently moved back to Dakar from Los Angeles. He has a great eye and he's very talented.
Yo, what's up, brother?
What's going on, brother?
Chilling, bro.
Good to see you again, man.
Good to see you. It's been a while.
Are the birds still here?
They're still around. I have a couple of tutorial Turk and Voyageur, and this one is just like a free bird. Her name is Almaz. I named her after my daughter.
Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson and his birds.
Yeah. My brother-in-law been saying that.
Yeah.
It's like, you're like Mike Tyson. Let's get in.
Clap, 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 clap. Bring the birds back.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, brother.
All right. I was born in Medina in 1988, and I grew up between Medina and then Jamagan Sikamba, which is like 16 kilometers from the city.
Where did you go when you left Senegal, and when did you leave?
On my first trip out of Senegal was in Germany for an art show, my first solo show in Freiburg in 2012. And then after I got married in 2014 and went to the US with wifey and our first child.
When you left Senegal, what made you decide to come back?
Wifey decided to come back before me. I was just like lonely in LA with no wifey, no kids, but also I was not feeling fulfilled in the US, in LA. Everybody knows how the US is in terms of like cultural shock and also just like trying to settle and stuff like that. So it was just like a hot mess with like, I was a soccer coach. So I was teaching soccer. Sometimes I used to do photography and communication, but mainly I was just like teaching soccer, how to kick balls with this program called Super Soccer Stars. And just like kids from Hollywood, a lot of rappers' son or actors from Hollywood. So living in mid-city, like Hollywood was not far, LA Fitness, LACMA, stuff like that. So you have this duality of just like the wealth around, but like not a lot of opportunities around. So I was just like, every time that I come back to Senegal, a lot of opportunities open up. I remember like one time I was working with Facebook, and I never met these people in LA, but I came back to Dakar and they hired me for this big project called Facebook One Africa.
Sometimes that's what it takes, coming back to your country of origin to be seen, to be considered and to have certain opportunities.
I came back actually like before COVID. So I came back in the middle of, like it was like during the African Cup of Nations semi-final, Senegal, Tunisia, I think, in 2019. And then like I ended up by just like saying like, I'm staying. I stopped like caring about like the papers or the green card. So I lost my green card. I'm just like, I just like decided to stay and pick back my company because like, I have a company, a communication company called DM Media. So we do everything related to communication and art curatorial and stuff like that. So yeah, I came back and just like work, starting like to get back on track, yeah.
What have some of the challenges been associated with your return to Senegal?
Before leaving, I was like this big time guy, like everybody knew, like have a lot of contract, was working as assistant in communication for the Ministry of Local Governance, and this guy was actually trying to become a mayor of Dakar. His name is Abdoulaye Diouf Sarr, so I used to work with him. And then like at some point, like around 2015, I was invited to showcase my work in Ivory Coast. And I came back, I was just like, I'm not working with anybody anymore, and I left the government. So yeah, so it was just like a challenge to like resettle back with all those like people that knew me before, and but like clients I've been just like going to other like fournisseurs, like we say in French, which is like workers. Since I'm this outgoing person, like always like conversation, and people like just like my personality and my work. So clients started like to come back. Like we have done like a lot of work for. Every year we do the yearbook for the International School of Dakar with my team, which is one of our biggest contracts. Have worked with different magazines, and also like Artwise curating shows. Companies like Wave, which is Chime Inc., a mobile money transfer. So just like different bunch of like body of work, like we are in different like fields.
And you have two daughters with your wife, Philly,
yeah,
who's also an amazing person.
Yeah.
And how does it feel today to be raising two daughters in Dakar,
yeah,
to be married,
yeah,
after having left Los Angeles with everything that you've been through, and
yeah,
having traveled to all the countries you've traveled to with your work? How do you feel overall?
Yeah, I feel blessed. I feel blessed. I feel blessed. It's challenging because it's girls, and also like, but it's a lot of blessing. They teach you a lot. They teach you like to be patient. They teach you like to be caring, to be love, and just like to share love. And that's my mantra. My mantra is just like visual art and love spreading. So I've been a person like that since kid. So I'm just like, they teaching me that again too, like on another level. So it's challenging, but also like beautiful. Wifey works in creative, which is like actually like she's my main fan, like, because at some point like in my life I was a little bit like I'm gonna stop this, and finally she was just like the one like pushing through, like applying for festivals, like curating my work before like anybody like being like involved. Now she's like doing her own thing, like a interior design project, but before she used to be like really involved. But alhamdulillah now, like with my gallery and just like different people that like I work with, like a gallery in LA, a Matter Studio gallery, and a gallery in Nigeria, and just like different people that I work with. So I had to definitely like come back and also like just like keep that fire going, and also like keep mentoring, and also keep creating. And one thing in my art practice is that like I couldn't create in the US or outside of Africa. So everything like that fire is in Africa. Everything, like even my inspiration is in Africa. So those are the motivation that made me like to come back and just like to move back and work here, and just like be surrounded by my loved ones, can be able like to travel in any country in Africa that I want to go, and just like keep that practice going. Like every year, at least like I'll visit like 2 countries and just like document graffiti, document like interview graffiti artists and stuff like that, yeah.
I feel the same way. I love creating in Africa. I love discovering new countries, and it just, my energy is different here. The vibe is different. It's so friendly and welcoming, yeah, especially in the creative space, yeah, you know? So I definitely relate to what you're saying, and yeah, I'm excited to see where you create and check out your office. And you have a home studio, right?
Yeah, yeah. We can go. We can
check
go.
It out?
Yeah, let's check it out. Let's check it out. Welcome to my office.
Nice. I love the color in here.
By the way, what we were talking about, this is like a kind of like a wall of fame with like my first show in Germany from the newspaper by the Zeitung, and just like different type of like little snippets of shows, and also countries that I've been visiting and art shows.
Tell me a little bit about your creative process. What's the primary medium of storytelling that you use?
My cousin Dib, who is part of the first crew of graffiti, put me into art. And that's how I started this art journey. I started with graffiti art. And at some point, I found out that like there was more like skills young man than I was. And I was like, wait a minute, let me just like stick to the camera. And I switched my tools from the spray to camera. That's how I decided like to switch, and from that point, I stick into camera, so using photography as a tool.
Which of your projects or which of your campaigns has been the most exciting for you?
One project that I really enjoyed doing was the Ami Kole campaign with my good friend Jara Njai, who used to work for Glossier and L'Oreal, and since last year, she started her new project, which is a beauty brand called Amicole. So we shot it here with really international model, Seinabu Cissé, who is like me, trying like to come back. And yeah, that's the project that I really, commercial-wise, that I really enjoy doing, because the first time we actually met, I was showing a movie in New York at the Lincoln Film Center. And she was the only Senegalese who came with a friend, another friend who actually owned this brand, Art Circle, and they came to visit, to check out my movie. And since that day, she was like, once I start my project, you will be the one shooting it. And she kept her promise. And that was just like one mind-blowing to come back and just like do it here in Senegal. And in art-wise, let's say like one of the projects that I enjoy always doing is Devenol, which is the portrait, because every year I do it during Tabaski or the Eid el-Kibir or Eid el-Fitr. So those are the two projects that I always like doing, because people still like it, even though it's repetitive, but people like it. So I always like doing it again and showcasing it all over the world.
What advice do you have for other young Senegalese artists who are all over the world, who dream of coming back to Senegal and creating in Senegal?
One thing that you have to do is just like to focus on yourself. There is this poem from Abdel Malik who say like circule petit, sinon tu resteras petit. Petit, tu sais, beaucoup sont morts parce qu'ils voulaient être en raccord avec le décor. So we've been always like trying like to fit in, and that's the danger. When you try to fit in, you just like lose yourself. So you should just like stick to what you're doing and just like trust the process, because I never been to all those like group or just like try to follow like one thing, because like if you follow this, it's a trend and the trend will die. But if you prove to yourself, you're gonna get there, and just like focus on one thing and not be like distracted because of like other people, what they're doing.
How has COVID-19 affected your creative process, your exhibits, your work?
The first year of COVID, so I started like working with British Council, signed a contract and everything, was about to just like be the project manager for this big time project here, and then COVID hit. So everything got canceled. But at least like the first, the beginning of the work, I got paid for it. And then like 6 months later, it made me just like refocus on myself, refocus on my family, refocus on my art, my practice. So during COVID, right after the 6 months, everything started like to flourish, because like everything started like to go online. We did Christie's with my gallery. We did like different art shows on just like online. And the money started coming in online, and we were happy about it. So thank God for COVID on my end, because like I made a lot of sales and with my gallery and everything, but also my condolences to or people who lost their lives because it's been hard, and also like people are not able to move around and stuff like that. Everything is got closed, so a lot of people dealing with depression because you are on a daily basis with your own self. So it's really hard for people who don't have like the skill set to deal with themselves on a daily basis or with their loved ones.
Yeah.
So I'm sending my love and prayers to everybody. Yeah.
What is the project that inspires you the most to keep creating?
Actually, like the project, which is like kind of like my rebirth, I have actually already done it. It's called Dead Man Walking, and it was just like over there. I have shown it in Jordan in 2016 or 2017? Recently, that's the same show that like I have shown in Lagos. So in 2021, people like it, and collectors have been like still like collecting it. I was just like, okay. So I was been like, that's why I was already saying that like you should keep like doing what you're doing, because like if you truth to yourself, no matter what, it will pay off. And that project I did it like in 2015. So and it's still like relevant, and that's a project that I really loved.
Cool, man. I like your office. I like the lighting and the deco in here.
Yeah.
And the functionality.
Thanks. I like what you're doing too.
Collaboration is key, and you know the filmmaking and visual mediums and all pretty much creative mediums are a team sport, collaborative effort. So
definitely.
I love that. You know, it's very important. Shout out to my team.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
All right.
Couldn't do it without you.
You see that one that I was telling you about, Anais.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
The album cover.
Yep.
Nice. And what's this piece on the floor here?
So this piece on the floor is from a project called Remission that I have shown with the French Institute Français du Sénégal.
Cool. It looks really good. I love the big piece on the floor too, the large format.
Yeah.
You know, very J.R. Agnes.
Yeah.
It looks good.
Oh, you remember this one, right?
Yeah, I saw that Yas Hotel in June, right?
Yeah. It's called Forgotten Icons, enlightening the life of Yannick Odusen and Abigana Job, who self-proclaimed herself as a first female rapper in Senegal and in Africa.
Dope, man. I enjoyed this exhibit.
Thank you.
After spending time at Djibril's home, we headed to the Henriette Batili Museum of the Woman to check out an art exhibit he curated.
Welcome to the museum, Henriette Batili. This project is sponsored also by Goldsmiths University.
Okay.
And the Patrimoine Culturel. And we just like selected 20 pieces. And those 20 pieces, we have asked some young artists from the École Nationale des Beaux-Arts to inspire from those 20 pieces and create like their own art piece. Actually, we have like different artifacts like from all over Africa, not only Senegal, but all over Africa. At the door, we have a couple of them from like Guinea. This one is a bruiteur, jouet d'enfant, instrument de musique. A fille Peul is from Senegal. This one is from Senegal, but this one is actually from Sudan. Objet pour accompagner la musique Dogon. It's for the Dogon people.
Yeah.
And Mali, Ethiopia, Guinea.
Wow.
And one piece part of my work, which is like curating art shows too. I'm an associate curator.
Okay.
And this body of work is because of the help of people like Professor Ibrahima Chow. And you can see like all those artists, they selected like they based on themselves like from those pieces to create like little pieces like papier mâché from a young artist named Awasar.
I like this piece a lot here, this backpack.
Yeah, the backpack is amazing. The backpack is amazing. It's made by this artist named Asugay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Asugay, a young artist from the École Nationale des Beaux-Arts.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, look at these big slippers.
Yep. So this is part of my work too. This is part of my work.
Cool.
So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
It's dope, man.
Yeah, thank you for
Musée
having
de
me.
la femme Henriette Battini.
C'est ça.
Super.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Merci, au revoir.
Merci.
Jërëjëf.
Au revoir.
Jërëjëf.
You can't go to someone's home in Senegal without eating. It's called teranga, good old-fashioned Senegalese hospitality. Djibril hooked us up. The crew and I sat down with him family style and enjoyed Senegal's national dish. Dakar is a lovely place with good people, good vibes, and good food. The journey continues. Stay tuned for the next episode of Momo Dione Going Home.